At 0628 local time, Russian forces were preparing for one of their most daring raids into occupied Kherson yet. 2 Russian helicopters sat on the tarmac at Gvardeskoye Airbase, their crews running through the routine pre-flight checks. Meanwhile, a tugboat and Russian Special Forces dive team were loading up special cargo in Sevastopol harbor. While the morning had been quiet so far, this would all change in exactly 4 minutes. Unknown to the Russian crews, 12 Ukrainian drones launched from sea vessels were already racing towards their targets at 140 kilometers per hour. And thankfully for Ukraine, these garage-built drones came equipped with one critical advantage. But first, they had to survive a chance encounter that almost ended everything before it began. A Russian Raptor patrol boat on a routine sweep suddenly opened fire into the pre-dawn darkness, its 14.5 heavy machine gun hammering at shadows on the water. The gunner had spotted 3 heat signatures racing toward Crimea at 35 knots, Ukrainian USVs, each one carrying 4 aerial drones on waterproof launch rails. Tracer rounds, special bullets that glow so gunners can direct the fire better, lit up the black sky like deadly fireworks. The Raptor accelerated to 48 knots, its engines roaring as it closed the distance. The USVs were trapped, maximum speed 35 knots, open water all around, nowhere to hide. The Russian gunner walked his fire closer with each burst, rounds impacting just meters from the fleeing drones. The lead USV suddenly veered hard right toward the shallow reefs near Cape Chersonis. The other 2 split left and center, forcing the patrol boat to choose. The Raptor's depth finder started screaming 2.5 meters, 2.0, 1.8. The captain knew these waters, 1 meter deeper, and they'd tear the hull open on volcanic rock. He slammed the throttles into reverse. At exactly 1,800 meters from the Raptor, the USVs initiated emergency drone deployment. Launch rails snapped vertical. 12 drones rocketed skyward simultaneously, climbing at 50 meters per second. The Russian gunner tried to track them but hit his mount stops. Maximum elevation, 60 degrees. The drones were already at 75. Simple geometry had just defeated a $1 million weapon system. But unknown to the drones, a toothless Raptor was the least of their worries. The drones were operating normally when Russian electronic warfare kicked in. The Murmansk BN system, activated from the Tarkin-Kut Peninsula. Imagine someone turning on a 400-kilowatt radio jammer that blocks every frequency you can think of. Your Wi-Fi router puts out 1/10 of a watt. This thing basically turns the entire electromagnetic spectrum into static. But it got worse. The Russians weren't just blocking GPS, they were feeding it false information. The navigation screen showed the drones 15 kilometers from their actual position. If the drones continued with those coordinates, they'd fly straight into empty ocean. The Ukrainian operators had prepared for this. They switched to inertial navigation, the drone's internal gyroscopes tracking movement without any outside signals. Think of walking through your house with your eyes closed. You don't need to see because you count steps and remember where the turns are. The drones formed up at 2,000 meters altitude, their cameras already scanning the horizon. Sevastopol harbor lay 22 kilometers to the southwest. Gvardeskoye Airbase sat at 35 kilometers due south. The mission parameters were clear. One team would hit the naval base, the other would strike the airfield. Both targets had to be hit simultaneously to prevent alert messages from ruining the surprise. As the patrol boat fired at the escaping USVs, now disappearing into international waters, the 12 drones split into 2 groups. 6 headed inland toward the airbase, 4 descended toward the harbor, 2 remained at altitude as communications relays. The sun was just beginning to rise, painting the Crimean coast gold. It would provide perfect cover for what came next. At 0617, 4 drones descended through morning fog towards Sevastopol harbor. The naval base bristled with defenses, Panzer missile systems, radar arrays, hundreds of sailors on watch. But the drones had one advantage. Nobody expects an attack moving at bicycle speed. The Panzer S-1 system locked onto the drones immediately. This thing can track a tennis ball at 20 kilometers. These drones should have been easy prey, but the system's computer kept rejecting them. The Panzer was designed to intercept cruise missiles screaming in at 300 meters per second. These drones were dawdling along at 11 meters per second. The tracking algorithm literally couldn't believe something would fly that slowly on purpose. It's like having a speed trap that ignores anyone driving under 20 miles per hour. The software assumes it must be a bird or debris. Big mistake. The drones dropped to 10 meters, weaving between anchored warships. At this height, radar waves bounce off the water and cancel themselves out. The same physics that makes your phone drop calls in certain spots. The massive steel hulls of patrol boats created perfect radar shadows. A sharp-eyed sailor spotted them first, pointing and shouting. The Panzer operators switched to manual optical tracking, basically an ultra-expansive camera system. But morning fog had rolled in, cutting visibility to 800 meters. The system needed 3 seconds of steady tracking to calculate a firing solution. The drones would jink every 2 seconds, never giving the computer enough data. It's like trying to focus a camera on a hummingbird. By the time you lock on, it's gone. Their target, a BUK 2190 tugboat, sat moored at Pier 7, its crew conducting morning equipment checks. This wasn't any harbor workhorse. It supported Russia's PDSS, their underwater special forces. These combat divers trained for years, using gear worth millions of dollars. The tugboat carried diving chambers, underwater propulsion vehicles, and enough demolition equipment to sink a destroyer. Taking it out was the first part of a two-pronged attack against the upcoming Russian Special Forces operation. They also needed to take out their helicopters. If even one attack failed, they could quickly acquire more assets for their mission. This meant that both the tug and the helicopters had to go down no matter what. 2 sailors manning the tugboat's DSHK heavy machine gun spotted the incoming drones at 400 meters. The weapon roared to life, firing rounds the size of human thumbs at 850 meters per second. But the mount only elevated to 60 degrees. The lead drone approached from almost straight above, diving at an 80-degree angle. It presented a target area of exactly 0.09 square meters, about the size of a large pizza. Here's the thing about human reaction time. It takes 250 milliseconds to see something and pull a trigger. At 200 kilometers per hour, the drone traveled 14 meters in that quarter second. The gunner was literally shooting at afterimages, his rounds always trailing behind reality. The other 3 drones came in low from different compass points. The gun needed 6 full seconds to turn 180 degrees, and 6 seconds is an eternity when you're under attack. The first drone slammed into the bridge windows at 140 kilometers per hour. Its shaped charge, a copper cone wrapped in 3 kilograms of explosives, created a jet of molten metal moving at 8,000 meters per second. It punched through steel and glass like they were paper. The bridge instantly filled with smoke and flame. The second drone hit precisely at the waterline. Water pressure at 1 meter depth equals 1.1 atmospheres, about 16 pounds per square inch, through a meter-wide hole. That pressure forces in roughly 33,000 gallons per minute. The tugboat immediately listed 20 degrees to port. Diving equipment worth millions of dollars slid across the deck and splashed into the harbor. The PDSS team had been loading their gear for the morning mission, likely underwater reconnaissance of Ukrainian coastal defenses. Now they were watching all of it sink. Underwater demolition charges, classified communications equipment, and irreplaceable specialized diving gear sank into Sevastopol's muddy bottom. The entire special operations capability of the Black Sea Fleet's elite divers had just been eliminated in 30 seconds. But this was just the first strike. 6 more drones were still racing toward Gvardiskoye Airbase, where helicopter crews were starting their pre-flight checks, completely unaware that the welcome wagon was on the way. The 6 drones approaching Gvardiskoye had flown 35 kilometers inland, burning through 60% of their batteries. They followed the highway at 3 meters altitude, using morning commuter traffic as cover. Every time a truck passed underneath, the drone's signatures disappeared in the radar scatter. They were threading the needle between power lines, road signs, and bridge overpasses at 140 kilometers per hour. At 0621, they reached the airbase perimeter. The base's Tor M2 system, a mobile surface-to-air missile launcher that cost $25 million, should have engaged them at 15 kilometers. But the Tor has a secret weakness nobody talks about. The Tor's radar doesn't look everywhere at once. It sweeps in elevation bands, first scanning high altitude for aircraft, then medium altitude for helicopters, then low altitude for cruise missiles. The entire cycle takes 4 seconds. High scan, medium scan, low scan, repeat. It's like a security camera that pans up and down. There's always a blind spot wherever it's not currently looking. The drone operators had timed this perfectly. They watched their synchronized chronometers, waiting for the exact moment the Tor's beam would sweep upward to check for high-altitude threats. At 06:21 and 14 seconds, the radar beam tilted up to scan above 500 meters. The drones, flying at just 3 meters altitude, had a 4-second window to cover 400 meters of open ground. They accelerated to maximum speed, 180 kilometers per hour, racing across the perimeter while the Tor's radar painted empty sky above them. By the time the beam swept back down to low altitude at 6:21 and 18 seconds, the drones had reached the cover of the base's own buildings. The Tor operators saw them flash across the screen for half a second, then disappear into the radar shadows of hangars and maintenance facilities. The operator frantically switched to the manual sector scan, trying to reacquire the targets. But now the drones were inside the base perimeter, weaving between structures. Every building created a blind radar spot. Every vehicle park, every fuel tank, every aircraft shelter blocked the Tor's line of sight. It's the same reason police helicopters can't track someone running through a dense city. Too many obstacles breaking up the sensor picture. The drones followed high-voltage power lines toward the flight line, riding 3 meters above the cables. Those lines carry 110,000 volts, creating an electromagnetic field that buzzes at 50 hertz. It drowns out the small electric signatures of drone motors. On radar screens, they look like power line interference, the kind operators see and ignore every single day. The morning sun sat low in the eastern sky, blazing at 2 million candelas. That's 20 times brighter than car headlights on high beam. Every optical sensor, every camera, every human eye looking eastward was completely overwhelmed. The drones approached from directly out of this blazing blind spot. It's an old fighter pilot trick, attack from the sun, adapted for the drone age. But light doesn't mask the sound of whining motors. A perimeter guard spotted them first, shouting into his radio. 3 soldiers sprinted from the ready room carrying Igla-S portable missile launchers. The 9K-338 Ilga-S is one of Russia's best manpads, which stands for Man-Portable Air Defense Systems. It can lock onto a fighter jet from 6 kilometers away and chase it through almost any evasive maneuver. These drones should have been sitting ducks. But here's the problem. The Ilga tracks heat, and electric drones barely produce any. A commercial drone's motors barely get warm, about the temperature of a laptop computer. The Ilga needs something actually hot to track, like a jet engine at 600 degrees. It's like trying to spot a match flame from a mile away. The missile seeker head supercools itself using argon gas, dropping to minus 200 Celsius. At that temperature, it can detect heat differences of 1/10 of a degree. But the drones were flying straight out of the rising sun. Solar radiation at 1,000 watts per square meter completely saturated the infrared sensors. It's like shining a flashlight into night vision goggles. Everything just whites out. One soldier tried to get creative. He switched to manual launch mode, basically firing blind and hoping the missile's proximity fuse would do the work. The Igla streaked off at Mach 2, its proximity fuse armed to detonate within 1.5 meters of any target. But these drones presented a cross-section of just 0.09 square meters, about the size of a dinner plate standing on edge. The missile threaded between the 2 drones with a few feet to spare on each side. The fuse never detected anything worth exploding for. The Igla has another problem: minimum engagement range. The missile needs 500 meters to arm its warhead, a safety procedure to protect the shooter. The drones were already at 450 meters and closing fast. The soldiers frantically tried to reload, but each launch tube weighs 18 kilograms. All 6 drones blew past the missile teams, fanning out across the airfield. Their simple cameras started pattern matching, comparing what they saw against stored images. The algorithm was looking for specific shapes: the distinctive double-bubble fuselage of an Mi-8, the angular cockpit of an Mi-24. It took 3 seconds to find them both, parked on the maintenance apron. Battery warnings flashed urgent red, 8% power remaining, maybe 90 seconds of flight time. 4 PKM machine gun positions around the helicopter apron opened fire simultaneously. This would be the last defense, and everyone knew it. The PKM gunners unleashed everything they had, each weapon spitting out 650 rounds per minute in long, desperate bursts. But hitting a small drone with a machine gun is like trying to shoot a fly with a pellet gun while riding a roller coaster. But the problem wasn't the weapons. PKMs are excellent machine guns. The problem was human psychology and physics. In training, gunners practice on predictable targets, a cardboard silhouette moving at constant speed on rails. You learn the rhythm: see target, calculate lead, squeeze trigger. But those drones were improvising a deadly jazz solo. Accelerate to 140 kilometers per hour, 40, climb 10 meters, dive, barrel roll, repeat randomly. The gunners were always shooting at ghosts, firing where the drone was 2 heartbeats ago. The tracers told the story: streaks of light chasing shadows across the morning sky. Always behind, always too late. 4 gunners, 6 drones, anyone could do that math. At least 2 would get through untouched. Knowing you're going to fail changes everything. Your hands shake more. You waste communication on impossible deflection shots. You second-guess every burst. Fear makes you stupid, and math makes you afraid. 2 drones suddenly climbed high and flew perfectly straight, a pop-up maneuver designed to draw fire. Every military instinct, every hour of training screams, "Engage the easy target." It's irresistible. While 4 machine guns swiveled upward, tracking the obvious threats, 4 other drones scattered at different altitudes. Classic misdirection. Look here, while the real attack comes from there. The gunners managed to hit 2 drones. One took rounds through its battery pack, spiraling down, trailing white smoke and sparks. Another lost half its propellers, wobbling but maintaining just enough control to continue forward on momentum until it plowed into the ground. 4 made it through clean. The mathematics had played out exactly as predicted. At 0628, the first drone hit the Mi-24's cockpit canopy at 140 kilometers per hour. The helicopter sat cold and empty. Its crew had evacuated when the base alarm started wailing. 3 kilometers of shaped charge detonated on impact. The explosion created a jet of molten copper moving at 8,000 meters per second, hot enough to vaporize steel. It punched through bulletproof glass, instrument panels, and seat armor like they were made out of cardboard. The copper jet found the hydraulic lines running under the cockpit floor. Hydraulic fluid ignites at 210 degrees Celsius. The copper was at 3,000 degrees. The flash fire spread through the helicopter's guts in seconds, finding ammunition belts for the 33mm cannon. The rounds started cooking off in the heat, firing randomly in all directions. The second drone slammed into the Mi-8's auxiliary fuel tank. Aviation fuel isn't like what you put in your car. JP-8 has a flash point of just 38 degrees Celsius and burns at over 2,000 degrees. 500 liters spilled across hot tarmac, spreading under the already burning Mi-24. The pool of fire found the attack helicopter's main fuel tanks, heating them past auto-ignition temperature. In just 43 minutes, Ukraine's Ghost unit had eliminated 2 helicopters worth $32 million, sunk a Special Forces support vessel with irreplaceable equipment, and destroyed whatever mission Russia had planned for that morning, probably sabotage of Ukrainian infrastructure or wreaking havoc behind Ukrainian lines. This wasn't just another successful strike. It proved that a great value brand weapon could defeat the Whole Foods version anytime, anywhere. Bye for now.